Sorry, I am not a singer. Edit that out. But
I'm also a student of the person that's coming to talk to me.
I am the coolest thing to come out of Yale, Michigan. Okay. This is where you learn to be the best songwriter in the world. We live in a society of instant gratification. And every song does not have to be instant gratification. If you This was phenomenal. Thank you.
Oh, hey everyone, and welcome back to the So Rude podcast. My name is Paige Ruderman, and today I am so excited to welcome a special guest to the show. Jill Moody brings more than 17 years of experience in event production, management, and booking as the Director of Songwriter Relations at NSAI, the Nashville Songwriters Association International. Formerly the Director of Programming at Analog at Hutton Hotel, she brought her vast experience to the songwriting community, showcasing her passion for supporting Nashville's creative culture and artistic scene. In 2016, Jill was honored as one of Nashville Business Journal's Women in Music City, which recognizes women who have helped to shape the music industry. She was also named in MusicRow's 2024 Next.Big.Thing Industry Directory, the next generation of leaders. The directory showcases Nashville music business professionals who occupy important roles at their respective companies. This class of professionals are on a trajectory of excellence to successfully lead the Nashville music industry into the future. I first met Jill during my first Tuesday weekly workshop at NSAI, where she welcomed me wholeheartedly into the community. And it has been a pleasure getting to know her more over the years. I am beyond excited she is joining me today on the show. Jill, thank you so much for coming on the So Rude podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you for that introduction. First of all, Paige, that was amazing. I am so excited to be here with you. I adore you. And I love, love, love just talking to you and being able to sit down. And since we've met and been able to connect and have conversations about songwriting and your career and things like that, it's always just been such a joy. So I am super excited to be here with you tonight.
Oh, I'm so excited you're here. And likewise, I truly value whenever I get the chance to speak with you professionally, personally. Like, you're just the most welcoming heart and soul in the Nashville music industry and like here in town. And so like I'm just so lucky to have you and like so excited to showcase all the value that you bring because that bio is just a small piece of all of the important and impressive work that you've done here. So like I can't wait to get into everything that
Well, thank
about
you,
you.
Paige. I'm like, geez, I'm gonna walk out of here with the biggest head in the world. They're like, someone open up my office doors a little bit.
You'll just be floating.
Thank you. No, I am beyond. I just celebrated my 20th year in Nashville in August, and I am beyond grateful every day. Been able to come to Nashville, first of all, but just to be here this long and experience everything that I've experienced, not just in the music business, but watching Nashville change and all of the amazing things. And then some of the things I was kind of like, oh, I really like that venue that y'all tore down. So yeah, I'm super excited to chat and share a little bit about myself and my journey here in Nashville.
Perfect. And so you already shared you've been in Nashville for 20 years. That is incredible. What brought you to Nashville originally, and where are you from before moving to Nashville?
Yeah, so I grew up in a very tiny town in Michigan, in the Thumb area. So yeah, I grew up in a tiny town called Yale, Michigan. And I actually had a different career path that I was going down. I think I was in college and did not really think that it was a career for me. I thought it was what I wanted to do. And so I withdrew from all of my classes and lost my scholarship, which made my parents very excited. And then took a year off and just really tried to figure out what it was I wanted to do. And I worked with this guy. His name is David Spiller. And he said to me, Jill, you talk a lot. Have you ever thought of going to Specs Howard, which was a audio and video broadcasting and media arts school in Detroit? And I had never heard of it. I was like, what is it? And he told me all about it. I went online and checked it out. And I was like, told my parents, it's like, I think I want to go here. I think this is what I want to do. And I went to the school and checked it out. And you have to take all these tests and you have to speak and do all this stuff. And I got in, and then I really realized how much I loved videography and video editing. And so in my final time there, I was talking to my teacher and I was like, okay, so I should go to LA. And he's like, no, you should not go to LA. He is like, you should go to Nashville. So one of my instructors at Specs Howard is who suggested that I come here. So I finished school, had zero plan whatsoever, and drove down to Nashville. My very best childhood friend was here. Her husband was stationed at Fort Campbell and stayed with them for 2 weeks. And went and looked at apartments, and the gal was like, "You need to have a job to get this apartment." So I was like, "I'm ready to sign right now," which I did have some savings. And she's like, "You need a job," and she said, "Go to Gaylord. They're hiring all of the time." And so I went to Gaylord and they had a job open at the Wild Horse Saloon. And that's kind of just, I got really lucky and was a lighting director to kind of start my career in the music business in Nashville, and just kind of all took off from there.
That's incredible. So, do you have any speculation why the professor recommended not to go to LA when you were like, okay, I'm going to go to LA? He's like, don't go to LA, go
Yes,
to Nashville.
he said it is so expensive. I mean, we're talking like this was probably 2002 when I started school there, 2001, 2002. And it was even for then, he's like, it's so expensive. You're going to go there. You're going to have to work multiple jobs to pay rent, and you'll have a bunch of roommates. And he said, with all of the jobs that you'll have to pay your rent, you will never be as flexible as you need to be to go be a gaffer or a PA or whatever on sets. And he said the work is very sporadic. And since you don't really know anyone there, have any form of support, he just thought Nashville was kind of growing enough that it was still affordable to live here. And then, easier to network a little bit. And it was so much cheaper. When I moved here, my rent was $379 a month.
You're
Yeah.
kidding.
I lived in Madison and they were running like this special. If you signed a lease for like 18 months, it was $379 a month. Yeah. Yep.
Oh, I
Yeah.
spend more than that on groceries in a month.
But this is the thing. I still struggled because I had student loans. It's all those things. You have your student loans, you're paying your rent. And I was like, I had never even lived in a dorm. So I commuted from my parents' house to school every day. So I never lived outside of my house. So I was like, what do you mean? I have gas and electric and rent? And so it was just like, oh my gosh, I'm making $11.50 an hour. How am I going to afford this? So it was even as cheap as it was compared to like what people are paying right now. It was still, I ate 89-cent Taco Bell bean burritos out of necessity because it was cheaper than going in and grocery shopping.
Oh my
So,
gosh. So you moved to Nashville and
mhm.
you shared that you lucked out with the Wild Horse Saloon
Yep.
working as the lighting director. What
Yep.
was it like working there at that time? And like, what did that entail? Like, what was your day to day like doing that?
Well, it was awesome and terrifying at the same time because I was hired in to go and like shoot content for them, edit it down so they could play it during the daytime. And then they had like a pipe burst and all their camera equipment got ruined. And they were like, well, our lighting director is going out on maternity leave. Do you know how to run lights? And I was still working part-time at the hotel in a little gift shop there. And I was like, I would have said anything to get out of that job. And I was like, yeah, I can run lights. And I knew about lighting when it comes to like lighting for TV and things like that. I didn't know a single thing about lighting for a band. So I totally lied. And I'm not promoting doing that. But I was like, I cannot wear this uniform in the Delta Sundry one more day longer. It was Gaylord was an amazing place to work. I'm not saying that it wasn't, but it was just like I didn't come here to work at a hotel.
Totally.
Um, So when I kind of got behind the console for the first time, the lighting director very much was like, "You don't know what you're doing, do you?" I was like, "No clue. You're teaching me from scratch." But she was like, "I don't care. I'm going on maternity leave, so you have 3 weeks to figure this out." And she was wonderful and she kind of taught me. But at the same time, it was hard because I grew up in Michigan. Country music was not what country music is now. I grew up on Canadian rock and then classic rock because that's what my mom listened to in the house all the time. My dad listened to old school country like Hank Williams, Waylon, and things like that, and all of the bands at the Wild Horse were playing 90s country still. And so not only did I not know how to use a console, I did not know the music. And so I was just like, okay, this is weird. Like, when do I change the lights? Because I have no idea what's coming next. So I will say there was some pretty terrible lighting shows at the Wild Horse Saloon for a little bit of time there, courtesy of me. Uh, so but it was at the same time the best experience ever. I learned so much. I worked with a gentleman, his name was Tracy Holder, and he was an audio engineer and he worked there part-time because he toured with Phil Vassar, Alabama, Dickie Betts, a bunch of people. So he worked during the weekdays and then on the weekends he'd go out on the road, but he was my mentor. He taught me about audio. He taught me how to properly mic a guitar, wire up a stage, taught me about frequencies. He spent so much time investing himself into me when he did not have to. Even my boss was like, "Who taught you how to do that?" I was like, "Tracy did," because I wanted to learn every aspect. At that time in my career, what I thought was my goal at the time was to be an artist manager. So I wanted to learn everything about live music. How do bands get booked? How does everything work top to bottom? And so since I was there every night, and there would be nights we were kind of slow, I would just roll my chair over. The lighting director sat next to the audio engineer and would just be like, "What are you doing? How does that work? Tell me." And so that really helped me in my time at the Wild Horse because I became the production manager there. So I advanced all the shows. I talked to the tour managers about everything from catering to load in to the production to what are we renting if we need to rent anything. All of that was taken care of through me. But I would have never been able to do that had it not been for Tracy. And then I eventually took over the booking for the venue. So when I started, we were probably doing like 12 major national act shows a month. It was crazy.
Oh my
And
gosh.
then in between all of those shows, we had house bands that played every night, private events, crazy private events. I'm not talking about like a little thing like Snap On comes in and they're taking over the Wild Horse and the rest of the block. Like really, really cool events. So I got to learn at the Wild Horse not just like the music side of things, but how important hospitality is in this business, not just taking care of the bands, but clients and how important corporate clients are to musicians and artists. And got to see the whole thing, how a venue runs start to finish, which was really awesome. I learned a lot about finance there. I had a boss. His name was Ron Career. He's amazing. He taught me everything about how to read a P&L. And I'll tell you, this girl did not think when she was like, "Oh, I'll edit this Gunsmoke TV episode back in Detroit," to be like, let me read you my P&L for the quarter and make sure my budget is balanced." Like, he
Right.
wanted every leader in their department to know every single thing about the finances, which all really helped me when I went to my next job. So it was an awesome experience. I cannot say enough things. I kind of feel like I grew up at the Wild Horse because, I was 22 years old when I moved to Nashville. And I was blessed to be able to work with bands that you've never heard of. To Ringo Starr did a show there, and like everybody in between in all genres. Blake Shelton did his fan club parties there for years. Darius Rucker did his St. Jude shows there. I mean, you're talking about every year seeing the same people, working with the same crews. There's there are still people that I talk to on Facebook that are still on tour with these folks. That it's just, it was a wonderful place to start a career for sure.
Oh my goodness, just the investment alone. It sounds like mentors and finding people to really fill your cup and like pour into you was such a theme when you were there
Yes.
with the people you got to work with.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple key people that were at the Wild Horse for me. Obviously, Tracy, and he passed away a couple years ago, which was really
Oh.
just heartbreaking because he was just Tracy was my Nashville family here. He was everything to me when I was at the Wild Horse and even after, like so supportive of me and my career. I know his son. Like you just get to know people and a lot of my team there at the Wild Horse. I still talk to a lot of them. We text and just great people, but as far as mentors, there were definitely Tracy and then Ron when it came to the finances. And there's a gal, Dina Tidwell, who was the director of sales there, and she oversees what is now going to be Luke Combs' property and the Blake Shelton properties for Ole Red. They taught me so much about so many things. And Kara Edwards was the booking agent at the Wild Horse that she taught me how to do her job so she could leave when she went and had babies. So if it was not for those people being so generous with their time and their knowledge, I don't know if I would have gotten to the place that I wanted to go to while I was there.
You said when you first started and you were learning the behind the scenes, you wanted to know all of the ins and the outs because you had thought at one point you would be an artist manager or a tour
Yeah.
manager. Okay,
Yep.
so like what made that decision? Was it working there that you realized I don't want to do this? Was it because you fell in love with other parts of it?
I think I think it's a little bit of both. I would talk to there were tour managers that I had worked with for years, whether they just kept coming in with the same band or kind of changed bands that you just kind of saw what they were doing. It's like, yeah, I don't think I want to tour. And while I was there, I did get married and he was on tour. And so it's like it doesn't really make sense for both of us to be touring. And then the artist manager thing, it's just at that time when I was at the Wild Horse, I wasn't really sure whether I did or did not want to do it, but I knew I loved being in a music venue and working with bands and giving bands a place to play. And that I just couldn't see that ending. I was still young and staying up till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning was no big deal then.
Oh my gosh.
Um, but I would say, like, towards the end of me being at the Wild Horse, I think, it got to a point where I was just like, okay, I definitely feel like I need to spread my wings a bit more. And they were amazing. Like my boss let me do an all original music showcase at the Wild Horse once a month. That was huge for them because at that time in the early 2000s or to mid 2000s, no one was doing original music on Broadway. And so we partnered with the booking agents in town and said, we want to give your up and coming artists a place to play. We're going to pay them, we're going to feed them, and we're going to make sure that they have parking. And they were like, why are you guys doing this?
Yeah, what's the catch?
And we're like, just because, it was just, we needed to do something that I think for me, I wanted to do something that I think was a little bit more fulfilling as far as trying out to do something that was not a cover band, but also wasn't a band that we had to sell hard tickets on. And it worked out for them because we had a built in crowd. Gaylord dropped those buses off every 30 minutes of people. And so it was really easy for them to say, okay, well, we have a built in crowd. We have this artist we've been working with. Let's go send them out. And it was a really cool showcase. It was called the New Nashville. And we were kind of playing on like, hey, if everybody on Broadway started to do something like this, it could really kind of change things for songwriters and artists one night a week or, once a month, whatever it was. And so that was really cool because we had so many people like Lainey Wilson played that, Brothers Osborne played that, Carly Pierce played that, like Ashley McBride, all of these bands, Abby Anderson in the, I can't even remember, like probably like 2012 or maybe a little bit after, but That's when they were playing it, when they were up and coming. And it was such a cool thing because it's like you have a packed room and giving these folks a chance to have like a Nashville play. So managers and labels and whoever wanted to come out, all of the booking agents would invite all these people to come out and see them. So it was a really, really cool thing. But then it just got to the point where I was like, okay, what else can I do? You know?
Yeah. And so, wow, that's so impressive that you were able to help cultivate that original music because even to today, there are some original music outlets on Broadway, but like it still is to this day a very much cover band
Yeah.
arena and providing those, I don't know, showcases, however you
Mhm.
wanted to describe it for people to meet other individuals in the industry and like say, hey, this is someone who's really been working on the craft, like give them a chance to kind of like show people what they got. Like that's such a special thing.
Yeah, it was amazing. And I mean, I know they do that at Chiefs now, which is the coolest. I was just there a couple weeks ago for writers round and it was just like this, it just is a really cool experience to give tourists that are already downtown. They get to discover somebody and hear original music. I love that. So,
That's so cool. And so with your work at the Wild Horse Saloon, next you is that when you then went to the Hutton
yeah.
analog? Okay.
Yep. Yeah, so I got the call. It was kind of a weird roundabout thing. I got a call from Red Light Management, an artist manager out of LA. I knew a gal that worked at the Hutton and they had opened Analog and they had done one show and it was a great show. And then they kind of all gathered around and they're like, we don't know what we're doing next.
Oh
And
gosh.
so they had it kind of put together a team of people, but the hotel had never been in the music business. The Analog is built from the parking garage, the original parking garage of the Hutton. So they put a ton of money into creating this music venue plus two studios in the parking garage out of nothing. So they kind of just formed together a team. They had a lot of people that were involved kind of on a consulting basis and they kind of all told me when they talked to me first, they're like, yeah, we all kind of sat down and went, okay, none of us know what we're doing. What are we going to do? So they had brought on a team and they were trying to book it. It wasn't really working. And a gal that I work with at the Wild Horse, which is why it's so important to like just meet as many people as you can and keep those relationships going. She worked at the Wild Horse and she said, I know someone that could turn this around for y'all. Give her a call. So out of the blue, I get a call from artist manager out in LA and he's like, hey, can you meet me at the Hutton Hotel to look at this music venue? I was like, what? You know? And he's like, oh, we put you know, it's this. And I in my head, I kind of thought it was like a stage in a lobby, just to be honest with you. So I was like, I'm only going because Amanda recommended that I go, you know, kind of thing. And so I showed up. I was like, this is so different and looking around the venue. And if you've never been there, it's kind of like the coolest living room in the world with stage and some lighting. We walked through and I was like, I'm not trying to be rude, but I work in venues in this town. I didn't know this venue existed. So what are y'all doing for promotion? He goes, yeah, we kind of just want it to be a secret. And I'm like, that doesn't work. But if you're trying to sell tickets to something, that doesn't really work. And we sat down and just had a really candid conversation. And at the time, it was very, I wouldn't say immature of me, but I was like, why would I go from this massive 60,000 square foot venue, even though I wasn't booking what we were originally, because we were doing so many private events, to a 300 capacity seat room? I was like, I was not looking at it in kind of the light I probably should have been at that time, but I was just like, I don't really know. I was kind of hoping to do something else, but he got me with, you can book whatever you want. And I was like, whatever I want. He goes, I don't care what you book. I'm like, you don't own this hotel. Who do I need to talk to? Because that piqued my interest. I was like, if you get me the people that can make that decision, I am interested. And so a couple days later, I got on a call with one of the owners of the hotel and the general manager of the hotel and said, hey, if you guys will let me book any genre, I'm interested, but I'd love to branch out. And they're like, we don't even care if it's music. You can do fashion, you can do whatever you want to do.
Comedy,
And that
whatever.
was all I need to hear. I was like, sign me up. And so I went over there. They had been open for about 6 months or so when I got there. And yeah, it was an interesting first couple months. I learned a lot there too.
Oh my gosh. So why was the booking whatever you want so interesting to you? I'm just curious because you
Mhm.
said I'm weighing these situations. On one hand, I'm booking this like huge
Mhm.
venue and going to the 300 seat smaller venue. That's not attractive. What was it about booking whatever you wanted that for you was like the light bulb of, okay, I want to make this switch?
So we had gotten to the point, Nashville changed when the show Nashville happened. And
Okay.
then
Yeah.
the new convention center, probably after the flood, it really had kind of started to change after all that and after the recession. The Wild Horse became the premier venue downtown for private events, which was wonderful. It was financially a really good thing for them. If you booked the concerts, though, it was not the most fun because you had a finite number of dates to try and book bands that were routing through Nashville. And so that made it really hard to book national acts. And I love, 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 love so many of the cover bands that we booked there. I still talk to a lot of them, but that was not exciting me anymore. It's like, okay, I've got these 12 bands on rotation. I do auditions once a quarter, what have you. It just got to the point where it was just, I felt, well, this is kind of plug and play to the point where I was
Yeah.
like, can I take over our social media because I'm kind of bored? That it was just getting to where I was like, I wasn't being challenged there anymore. I knew it was time for me to kind of leave. So when they were like, you can book whatever, I was like, this is awesome because predominantly at the Wild Horse Saloon, I was booking 90% it was country.
Hmm.
And then the national act shows, it didn't matter. I could book pop, country, rock, some hip hop we did a little bit, but I was also competing against the Ryman Auditorium. So it was like,
Yeah.
even though the company I worked for owned the Ryman, if you're going to do a Nashville play, it's like, well, are you going to play the Wild Horse or are you going to play the Ryman?
Yeah.
So it was just kind of like that. So few dates available. Plus, I'm bidding against one of
One
the
of the
premier.
most iconic venues in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where are you going to play?
Yeah.
Like, come on. Even when agents would be like, sorry, Jill, they're going to the Ryman. I'm like, no, trust me, I get it,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it was still like, it was just the more big private events we did, just the less it was on the calendar. And the appeal to book other genres was really exciting to me and non-music stuff. We did literary nights, we did fashion, something for Nashville Fashion Week. We kind of just spread out. And I was super grateful to those owners when I first started at the Hutton in Analog. It was owned by Carrie Watermark. And they were phenomenal. They really stood by when they said you can book anything you want. No one ever asked me. No
Wow.
one was ever like, what are you doing? It was just throw it at the wall. And I told them, when I first started, I was like, we don't really know what works because you guys haven't really booked a lot. And we just need to try whatever. And pop music just really settled in there at that time. There's just such a wonderful pop scene in Nashville. We became the venue for showcases for country music, a place for pop music. We started doing a Latin night once a month that was sold out all of the time with a really cool promoter. His name's Raul. He runs Intimo, and it is the coolest event. And so we just became this hub for anyone. And I told my bosses, so we were sitting down one time, and he's just like, it's so eclectic, it's all over the place. I was like, okay, those sound negative. How about we are a place in the community that is for everybody? I want everyone in Nashville to be like, we can play analog regardless of what genre of music we play, or regardless if we do or do not play music. Like we would do some things with the porch and third man books for literary nights that were awesome. Like John Prine came to one of them. It was just really cool. We do different things all of the time. Majority of it was all music focused, but it didn't matter the genre. Every genre at one point, I feel like is in Nashville had come through that venue when I was there.
What a testament to really growing a venue. That is so cool. Is there any specific show that stands out, whether it's at the Wild Horse or at Analog, that you're like from top to bottom or start to finish? This is just like the coolest event.
Yeah. I mean, at the Wild Horse, I would say there were so many just because we had a charity event there one night and Dolly came and performed. And it's
Oh.
just like that's Dolly Parton. That I mean, that is like so iconic. And the Ringo Starr and his all-star band, so iconic. Like
A beetle. That's
yes. And it
insane.
was just like, but I will say, as amazing as those are, I would say there are two of the shows I feel like to me and my career were kind of the coolest outside of obviously the ones I just mentioned. One of them was Billy Ocean, the guy, Caribbean Queen. But like he, from the moment that man walked on stage, he never stopped smiling. I was just up in the sound booth the whole time watching the show. And I was like, my face hurts because I had been smiling the whole time. And the people that were there, they were having the time of their life. And it was just such a different experience because we had not done a lot of non-country, or it was just a different show for us and a different demographic of people that came in. This feels like a cultural event more than a show, and it was just the most fun ever. And then there's one more that really stands out, but in a way that it was like I was probably 26 or so when I took over booking at the Wild Horse. So I was young. One, I was very young, female in the music business running a music venue, which is very rare for that time period. There were only, I would say, early on in my career, only three other women that had really come through on tour that worked on a crew. And one worked for Gretchen Wilson, one worked for Ringo Starr, one worked for Kelsey Ballerini a little bit later in my tenure there. There may have been a few other, but it was just really not as prevalent for gals to be part of a touring crew. Like they'd be artist managers and stuff like that, but like on the crew that you work with all day. So I was having this conversation with my boss. There was an artist that I had discovered that I was like, listen, I want to book this artist. And when I was at the Wild Horse to book a band or an artist, I had to put together a pro forma and present to my boss, like, this is how many tickets I think they'll sell. This is how much I think we can sell the tickets for. Here's our revenue. Here's how much it's going to cost us. Boom. And it was an artist from Scotland. And he was like, Jill, this is not going to sell. I was like, listen to me. I know you don't think this is going to sell, but I know it's going to sell. He's selling out everywhere. His name is Paolo Nutini, and I promise you he is going to sell out here. And he was just like, yeah, I don't know if I want to take a risk on this. What I didn't know at the time is that he was kind of on his way out as the general manager of the venue before like the guy who really taught me about finances came in. And he just really did not want to take a risk. And I was just like, dead set, I'm booking the show. And so finally, I just beat him down. I was like, listen, I know you think that I don't know everything that I should know at this point in my career because it was pretty early on in me taking over the booking. And I was like, I just want you to trust me on this. And he was like, did you already tell him that we would do the show? I was like, no, I didn't do that, but I want to. And so he finally was like, whatever, just book it. And I did, and it sold out. That was like the first thing I was so excited about because he doesn't get played on radio over here. It was just one of those things. He kind of has like an underground following, and it was the coolest show. It was so fun.
That is so cool. I really wanted you to be like, yeah, I already told him he was going to play, and I'm just trying to get the okay.
No,
That's where I
had
thought the
I
story
known,
was going.
I will tell you, had I known that he was going to be invited not to work there anymore, I would have just done it and then been like, sorry. Because
Yep.
I kind of lived my life then as like beg for forgiveness instead of ask for permission. But I was like, as much money as this is, I'm not going to risk my job on it. But
Oh my God, that is incredible. And it's also so fascinating that you would put together these pitches for how to bring in. Okay, so like that is like the nerdy side of the business
yeah.
that I am so fascinated. How did you start to pull that information together?
So I use Polestar Pro, which reliable-ish. I don't know how reliable it is because you're relying on other people to report accurate numbers at venues. So but I would go into Polestar. I would look like, okay, this is XYZ artist gross ticket sales, their ticket sales as far as revenue, and then the number of tickets that they're selling and their average ticket price. So I would go look at that, and then I know how much it costs me. Basically, I need to clear $7,500 bare minimum just for the cost of bringing in the staff, things like that, right? Now, this was early on. It's probably more these days, but that was kind of like our bar of no matter what, we have to clear that amount of money. Then I would go in and I would take into consideration how much it would cost to feed them. Now, the best thing was is Wild Horse, they fed everybody. They had a kitchen, right? It was a restaurant too. So I would take into account that. I would put a generic number like, okay, we'll spend $500 on the ride or how much ever. Okay, this is a bus run, so I know we're not going to have any rentals, so I don't have to worry about that. I have to factor in the runner. Are we paying for hotels? Yes or no? You're factoring in every expense that you have. Then on the other side of the Excel document was, okay, here's my revenue. If we sell 1,500 tickets, this is how much money we'll make. Well, I would try and lowball it because I want, at the end of the day, the show to look better than I'm proposing that it's going to look. So
Mhm.
I'm going to be like, okay, well, what if we only sell 1,000 tickets? We sell 1,000 tickets. This is how much revenue we'll make. This is how much I'm going to offer to pay the band. And then let's go from there. And it would just kind of tell you whether or not the show was going to make sense. If I had a band say, well, we need 30 grand, and I don't think we're going to sell out, and they're flying in and I have to rent backline and I have to pay for hotel rooms, da da da, that pro forma would start to tell me this show is starting to look a little unbalanced. So I either need to go back to the booking agent and say, and this is where relationships really come into play. Listen, I'm putting this together and it's not going to work. I really want this show. So what if I offer you a guarantee of this much and then we'll do a back end split? Or I'm kind of judging that I think tickets should be at $15 or $20, whatever. Do you think I can push that dollar amount on the show? And the agents will go back and say, oh my gosh, yeah, they're selling tickets for $50 here. Push that ticket revenue. And yeah, we'll take a little less and then let's take a back end. So a show would go from we need a $30,000 guarantee at a $20 ticket to let's take a $20,000 guarantee at a $45 ticket, but we want 90% back end split. So after you clear your expenses and go through your profit, then we're taking 90% on the back end. And sometimes that really worked in the band's favor. If that show went bonkers and sold out, they would get a hefty check after. And sometimes it didn't. So the agent's kind of taking a chance on us and we're kind of taking a chance on them. And so you really have to have good relationships with booking agents so you guys can kind of massage all the numbers to make it work for everybody. Because the booking agent wants it to work for the venue. Because if it doesn't, then it's like, hey, man, you kind of burned us on this. Not that they would intentionally, but like, this didn't work. And now I ate all of this money. And my boss is like, what are you doing? You just really have to kind of work with each other well. Or sometimes I had a artist call me one time himself and be like, Jill, listen, we got to work this out. And I'm like, I can't say no to Brett Michaels. Why is he calling me? And that's like true. Like he called and was like, this is what we need. And I'm like, ah, okay. I'll get back to you,
Yeah, right.
And I called the agent. I'm like, yo, he just called me. We don't have that kind of money. So it's just like those things that is just sometimes the artists, if they feel inclined, will try and involve themselves if they're very involved in their career. But 99.9% of the time, it's the agent that you're working with.
And it sounds like the theme of like relationships, it's already come up a few times. And I definitely had a question about that I wanted to ask
Yeah.
about. But someone listening to the show, and I would probably even say quite a few people listening to the show are independent. They want
Yep.
to book shows. Do you
Yep.
have any like tips or recommendations for someone who's independent? Maybe
Yes.
they're not working with a booker yet, or they want to, they don't know
Mhm.
how to find one. Like, what are any tips from your experience working on the booking end?
Yeah.
Hey, these are things that you should either have in line or you should know. I'd love to pick your brain about that.
Yeah. So I will say at Analog, I don't know that I ever actually worked with a booking agent. Everything was all independent. There were a few promoters, but everybody was independent unless it was a showcase and it's someone's manager, right? So this is what always caught my attention the most. And this is a thing to remember as an artist. If you're looking at booking clubs, understand when I came to Analog, I just saw I was booking the room. I ended up actually running the entire venue at one point. It was just what happened. It was just kind of like, okay, let me figure this out because circumstances just put out that I ended up kind of running everything. And for a lot of clubs, that is the norm. If you're looking at a club in like Ohio, I bet you that the booking agent is probably also the owner for a lot of venues, or the booking agent is also the manager of the venue. That is something that I would always tell anybody that asks me, be mindful that you are talking to someone that's probably wearing a lot of hats in a room that's like a 500 capacity or lower. Keep that in mind. They might not get back to you right away. So the one thing that I give advice now, because it always caught my eye, is when someone emailed me and said, "Hey Jill, I want to play Analog. Here are some dates I'm available. Here are some bands that I'd like to bring with me. This is how much it's going to cost, or this is the kind of money that we're looking for." That made it so easy because I could open that email, I could open my booking platform and be like, okay, yep, I have three of these dates available. This person's already putting a show together for me. I don't have to then go figure out openers that I'm not sure will or will not gel with these people. It was a ready-made show. I would comb my inbox and book those people first after I kind of got into it because it was just, okay, cool, 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 cool. And early on, when I was at Analog, as much as I was excited to have pop music in there, I had just spent 13 years at a country bar and music venue. So I was not as ingrained in that world as I wanted to be. And I was learning as I was going, just kind of who the bands were, who the artists were, things like that. So that for me was like, oh, thank you. There are four bands that are wanting to play on this date. Boom, book them and go. And so I would comb my inbox and look for those first, get those on the calendar, and then go through everybody else. And then I started just going back to the band saying, listen, I can put together a night with you as the headliner, you as the opener, but do you have friends that would want to play with you? Because I feel like all y'all get together, you all know each other, you're going to help promote it together. It's going to make for a much better turnout and was making it a little bit easier for me, to be honest with you. And everyone was always like, oh, yeah, no problem. Those kind of things are always helpful. So if you're cold reaching out to a venue, I would always do a couple of things. Give them dates you're available, let them know up front how much it's going to cost to have you there. And if it is a venue that they're looking for like an opener, two openers, tell them, hey, we can bring some opening acts. You let us know if the budget allows, or we can play. If you don't have the budget, we can play X amount of hours for you, whether it's all originals or original and covers. Just bullet point email. The hardest emails to get as someone who's running a venue is, hello, Jill. Here are five paragraphs about me and my band. And you never include a link to your socials or to a performance or anything. And I'm just like, okay, well, I know everything about your life except for what I need. I try and tell anybody that I talk to now, make it short, short and sweet, get to the point. And it's not curt to send an email like that. I think so many venue owners and operators would be like, thank you so much. Because if they're interested, put a social link in there, put a link to a live performance. For me, I always wanted a live performance because I'm not booking you if I don't know how you sound. And I can go to your website and listen to your album, but I myself could go into the studio and sound like $1,000,000 when I came out. So I always wanted live performances because analog, I also at the same time we were kind of throwing everything at the wall to see what would stick, was also trying to curate it to be one of the best rooms in town because it is by far the best sounding venue aside from the Ryman in this town. They spent so much money, and Michael Cronin, who's like a world renowned acoustician, set that room up so well. It deserved my making sure that everyone that played there is great as they could be. Those are the things that a venue operator is concerned about. Is this a good band? Are they going to make me money? And are people going to drink? And how easy is it going to be to work with them? That being the most key point. If you are easy to work with, they will have you back and they will tell other people how easy you are to work with. If you're difficult, it's one of those things, it's part of my French, but just don't be an asshole to people because in this town, that will kill, not even just in this town, but in this business, that will just hurt you more than you realize. There are things like back at the Wild Horse, if there was a band, a new band we had auditioned and they were playing and I couldn't be there, the first thing I would ask my staff was, oh, were they easy to work with? Because loading in and setting up and sound checking, all of this, like that is a long day for sound engineers and lighting directors, especially on tour, even at a venue. It was full production there. It wasn't just like plug in the bartender's running sound. It's like $1 million lighting, video, and audio rig there. So it was like a full thing. So I would always make sure, hey, were they kind? Because if not, I don't care how good they are. They just won't play here because there's enough going on for my staff to worry about. They don't have to worry about people coming in and not being kind to them. I always tell people be kind to people because it is just so hard to invite somebody back when they are not. I hope that answered your question.
It totally answered my
Okay.
question. So many gems. Make it simple, stupid. Make it so
Yeah.
easy for the person that it's
Yep.
almost like, why wouldn't you want to book me on your show?
Yes. Yes.
And to your point, you leave a lot more in the room once you go than when you were there. The reputation, the way you treated people, how kind you were you easy to work with? Did you have a smile on your face, like you were
Mhm.
saying with the one act that came and didn't stop
Yeah.
smiling the whole time? Like those are all things that people are going to remember. And then, as you've said, relationships are so important. People move around. So
Mhm.
you might have thought, oh, well, I did that at that one venue. But then that person in charge of lighting moved over to this venue and then
Yeah.
they moved over to that venue, or they trained someone at a venue that went somewhere else. So it's like, yeah, you don't quite realize just how deep the well goes and how,
Yeah.
you want to make sure you want to make sure you're keeping that in mind with the people you interact with.
And I would ask the other bands, like, hey, do you all know this band? They want to play here. I mean, everybody. And it's so hard because the reality is we're all human and we all have bad days. I can overlook a bad day. I've had bad days. There are sometimes I would be like, I need to call that band back real quick and be like, hey, I am so sorry. That probably didn't come off the way it should have, or what have you. Like, we're all human. We have bad days. But you also have to remember we're in the music business, but we're in the hospitality business. My goal for any venue I've ever been at, I would like people to leave here feeling better than when they got here. And I had a tour manager tell me that one time. He said, Jill, you should have seen what we had to deal with yesterday. They were on the road, and this is a A-level national act. They were playing a charity show at the Wild Horse, and he was like, nothing worked. Nothing went well. It was raining. They had had a rough day. And, as a touring crew, they're there before the band, they're setting up, they're there after. They need hot food and to be taken care of. So it was like the first time any band came in that was like a touring act or whatever, I was like, do you guys want food? Are you hungry? And they'd be like, yes. So it was like instantly you would change their mood because, they don't get a lot of sleep and they're on the road and what have you. You have to take into account, you have no idea what happened the day before they came to you. And so my goal was just, I want to make this a little bit better. And then they leave and they're happy. And at their venue tomorrow, they're not saying to that venue owner, "Oh my gosh, you guys should have saw what happened at the Wild Horse." That would have been horrible to me if we became that place that people were like, "Oh, they were terrible," or what have you. I'm sure there are people that would say that because not everything's perfect all of the time and things do happen, but I really don't think that that would have ever happened often.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good point. Not even just from the artist perspective, but from the venue perspective. If you're someone that wants to get into booking or promotion, what type of environment are you creating for the acts that come through your doors? Is
Yeah.
it welcoming? Is it a place that they want to play again? Whereas sometimes the artist wants to come back and play, but it's like, is that even a venue they would want to
Yeah.
again?
Yeah, because on the same token, if someone has a bad experience, I used to talk to my staff too about, hey, this might be a band you've never heard of before. This could be the next XYZ major artist. So there's so many things, but I had an artist tell me one time, I don't want to say the band name, but like they had pulled in. So there was a garage there. They pulled in. There was like this slow roll up door. And it's like, oh my gosh. And there were fans out on the street waiting for them. So they pulled in, and I'm hitting this garage door, like, oh my gosh, I hope none of them try and come in here. And the band's kind of waiting. And then the singer jumps out and goes, hey, don't put that door down. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm so sorry. And he goes out and he talked to every single person that was out there, signed autographs, took pictures. And he came in, he goes, hey, I wasn't trying to be rude. He said, but here's the thing I've learned in my career used to be going like this, and now it is going like this. And every person who is a fan of mine is important to me, and I will always sign everything. And it's not like in a bad way that his career was going in the other direction. It's just he was super popular in the 80s and 90s, and that kind of music wasn't as popular then, but he was a great person. I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Usually people come in here and are like, we're not getting out until the door closes because it's before show, it's sound check, they're not dressed or they don't have makeup on or whatever. He said, in my career, I've just always remembered that you never know where people are going to be in your career, and so you have to appreciate it at every step of the way. I was like, that kind of stuck with me. Oh, I never really thought about it that way. You used to play arenas, and you're not playing arenas anymore. You're playing a club, but he was still so appreciative to be there, you know? You just always have to. But going back to like being the warm and welcoming environment, that was what was so important to me when I came here. Songwriters are walking through this door every day. Some people are co-writing for the first time. Some people are meeting new co-writers. Some people are just nervous as hell in general, just to be in Nashville or whatever. There has to be a warm and welcoming environment when you walk in, because if you walk into nothing and someone doesn't talk to you and they're ignoring you and you're nervous and you're like, I just need to sign in, where am I writing today, could make the difference of your right. If you have someone that when they walk in, they're like, hey, so happy you're here today, how you doing, it puts people at ease. And if we can be that for them as they go down to their right, that could change the way that they enter a room, which could change the song that they write, you know? So it's always been super important to me, no matter where I am, just trying to be the best person that you can be for other people.
I love that. And that's such a natural transition because you currently work at NSAI, which is the
Mm-hmm.
hub of songwriting, it feels
Yes.
like, in Nashville. It's on Music Row, it's right in the heart of Music City, USA. When did you realize you wanted to start working more with the songwriting community?
I would say probably at Analog, we worked with songwriters a lot. We did some at Wild Horse, but not as often. But a lot of songwriter shows happened at Analog. And I was just like, I love this. The very first songwriter that I worked with was Jeffrey Steele at the Wild Horse. And I have to say, like, this was such a growing moment for me because I did not know who Jeffrey Steele was. Shame on me. So he was playing at the Wild Horse, and I wasn't booking then. I was just a lighting director at the time. And I went up to the keyboard player and I was like, hey, are y'all going to have a set list? Because I kind of want to like plan out my set and whatever. And he goes, no. And I was like, oh. And that threw me. And I was like, okay. And he goes, don't worry, you'll know all of the songs. And I'm like, okay, whatever, dude. At the time, we didn't have cell phones that you could just Google who Jeffrey Steele was. And so I was like, all right. So the show starts and it comes out and he opens with Gone or something like, oh my gosh, he wrote this. That's so cool. 4 hours later, he was still playing songs that I knew. And I was like, oh, I feel like such a jerk. But like the keys player never, I'm sure, told Jeffrey, but like it was just such an eye opening of holy cow. I did not realize this is what was going on off Broadway, off First
Yeah.
Avenue. So that was kind of my first like experience into realizing, okay, this is a completely different community that I'm in. So when I was at Analog, we did a lot of songwriter shows, and I love that. And I just appreciate the craft of songwriting so much and appreciate hearing it the way I wouldn't say that it was intended to sound, but there were times that Jeffrey would sing songs. I was like, that's what it's meant to be like. I love this version. You were so used to hearing it on radio from that artist. And then you hear the songwriter tell the story, and you're like, I love the song, not even because of who's singing it. I love it because of the story behind that song. And now I'm going to go listen to everything this person's ever written.
Yeah.
I was that person. I started diving into, okay, who is actually writing all of these songs? And so when I was at Analog, that was a really cool thing because that room is like such a listening space that you really got to listen to the stories of the song. And I would be the person like in the sound booth, like, listening, like just enamored with what was really taking place and really wanted to dive into that more. It was like a lot of the artists that played at Wild Horse were songwriters per se, or they wrote, but it just was presented in a very different way after I had worked with Jeffrey at the Wild Horse, and then I started to understand it in a different way. So when I was at Analog, I was like, okay, I really love this. And I had really, really realized like, I don't think I want to go any other route other than continuing to work with songwriters and artists. No matter what I do, if and when I leave here, I definitely want it to be more in the vein of working directly with people because the venue side is really awesome and amazing, but it is kind of transactional. Especially when I was at Analog, we didn't have a regular rotation of people. So it was like, hey, thanks for playing. Here's some money. Bye. And you got to spend such short amount of time with people. I was like, I want more time with these people that I'm enjoying seeing. Brittany, this is like full circle. Brittany, that works, she's a communications director here at NSAI, worked in the gift shop at the Wild Horse when I was a lighting director at the Wild Horse. So we kind of knew each other from there. And then, boop, Brittany came here. And occasionally they would send me jobs of like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? And I just was not ready to leave the live music. I loved it. I thrived on it. But then COVID happened. It was the first time since moving to Nashville. Thankfully, thank Carrie Watermark and my boss Dale kept me employed all through COVID. The hotel closed, Analog closed, and there were four of us employed. And I got to stay employed because I said yes to everything. If they were like, Jill, can you go work the front desk? I'm like, I've got you. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll do it. Jill, will you go take out trash and serve and take food upstairs to this private event? Yep. I said yes to everything. And my boss said, I need you to continue to keep saying yes, and I will keep you here, and you will have a job until I don't have a job. So
Wow.
when COVID happened, I stayed at the hotel and I worked 9 to 5. That was like a whole new world for me. I was like, what is this? I can have dinner with people and I'm not working on the weekends. Like, I am not accustomed to this. And in the beginning, I hated it because I didn't like getting up that early.
Fair.
But then I was like, I am thriving in this new environment of sleeping. And I started to be like, okay, I do love live music and I love artists and I love songwriters, but I don't think I want to do this anymore. And so when we were getting ready to reopen, I was kind of panicking because I was like, I just really don't want to go back to this. And so I started to look around a little bit, and it was crazy because I was actually in Texas for our owners looking at opening two venues and hotels that they owned, one in Austin, one in Houston. And I think she had texted me a job description of the job I have. And she was like, "Hey, just sending this to you." And I kind of looked at it and I'd gotten so used to saying, "I'll send it out to some people I know." And I was like, "Yeah, I'll ask around and see if there's anybody I know." And then I did this whole walk around with these people. And then I was at the airport and I opened it again. And I'm like, "Man, this sounds awesome. This sounds so good." But I think I had felt like I had pigeonholed myself into being like the venue girl, that I was worried that they wouldn't want me to work here because they would look at like, "Oh, she just booked venues," even though it's like, I've been professionally listening to songs for the last 17 years of my life, that I was afraid that I wasn't qualified, or, all of the things that you worry that you're not going to be good enough or whatever. And so I just texted her, I was like, "Hey, do you think I will be good at this?" And she was like, "Jill Moody, I have been sending you these jobs for you." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I'm so interested. And so that's kind of how this happened. And I got on a Zoom call. I was hiding in my car at the Hutton because I was like, I kind of felt bad. They had kept me employed. And so I was like on Zoom with them and I was like, "Yeah, I really would love this job," and whatever. And we had a conversation. Then the hotel sold. And I was like, "I don't feel bad about leaving. These people didn't keep me employed through COVID. I'm out of here." So that was like such a really cool full circle moment for me, being that, I knew Brittany, I knew someone here, and I had someone that believed in me enough to be like, "Hey, come on over here and work with us." And it has been such a blessing. This has been like, I feel like we've talked so much about Wild Horse and Analog, and those were more like coming of age. Like, I just grew up in a music venue, but this role was such a blessing to me in so many ways, because working with songwriters every day and getting to talk to you and all of these writers, if I can do something to help you all out in any way whatsoever, it is the most fulfilling for me. And just what NSAI does in general, what Bart and Jen do in DC and what they continue to do and what they've done is monumental for making sure that songwriters get paid, and what they continue to do to try and get them paid more from streaming companies. But just, you'll never meet somebody, I don't care what anyone says, hands down, you'll never meet someone who is more passionate about fighting for songwriters than Bart Herbison and Jen. And that alone, when they were talking about that, when they were telling me about what NSAI does, I was just like, "I'm sold. I don't know anything about Washington, D.C., but I'm in." To listen to people talk so passionately about trying to make sure that the profession of songwriting is going to go further than our generation is so inspiring to me. I've gotten to go to DC with them and kind of see what they do, and it's like, this is the coolest. So crazy to see Bart and Jen operate in DC, who they talk to and the conversations. And you're just like, this is wild. Like, it's just a different side of the music business that no one really gets to see unless you're with them in that. So that was really cool. But really, what my role here is just trying to help you all in any way that I can. And it's been the most rewarding in the sense of getting to watch people. Someone said, "Jill, do you remember the songs I played you a year ago? I'm kind of embarrassed of those, and look at where I am now. And you introduced me to these people." And I'm just like, it is the coolest thing in the world. Really, it truly is, to be able to come to a job every day that I love, to work with people every day that I adore. And that's y'all, obviously. I mean, I love my staff and the staff here that I get to work with, and it's really wonderful. But just to be like a small little part of y'all's story is really the most, really kind of beautiful thing and the most rewarding and fulfilling job I've ever had.
And it shows your passion for what you do for songwriters. The very first time I met you, you were so welcoming. You spoke to like how important that vibe is. Every time I get a chance to sit down with you, I always walk away feeling one step farther, one encouragement farther down the road. And so when people are lucky enough to meet with you, and I know you meet with songwriters all day, every year, I imagine you have had a lot of similar conversations. Of the songwriters that you're talking to, are there any common mistakes that you see songwriters making that you're like, oh my gosh, if I could just ingrain this message into
Yes.
all the songwriters, anything like that come to mind?
Could y'all calm down? No, I'm just kidding. Rushing. And that is in different areas. I have a lot of people that come to me and say, Jill, I want to meet with publishers right now. And it's like, you are not ready to meet with publishers. That is a hard conversation to have with some people because people come from all over the world to Nashville. And this is the thing. I am the coolest thing to come out of Yale, Michigan. Okay. It'll be that is the
Yes.
most arrogant thing you will ever hear me say.
Can you get a
But I
bumper sticker
stand
with
by
that
it.
on it, please?
I'm actually not. My sister is because she is the coolest thing to come out of Yale, Michigan. But I'm the second coolest because I come from a small town. Someone that works in the music business, whoo, that's like such a huge thing for that tiny little town with one stoplight. So I came to Nashville and it's like, oh, this is a whole different world. And as an artist and a writer, you might be the best thing that has ever happened to your town. And then you get here and you realize, like, oh, they're not messing around here.
Yeah.
And so Nashville, I think, is a reality check for all of us. I got a reality check when I came to Nashville. I think a lot of people do. Oh, okay, the writing here is different. It's just, it is because people here, this is where you learn to be the best songwriter in the world when you come to Nashville. And so when people come in and they're like, I just moved here and I want to meet with publishers, I want to get a record deal, I want to get a label deal, publishing deal, whatever. And you're like, well, that's really great, but let's talk about XYZ in your songs and let's talk about this. And do you know about this? And then they're like, no, I don't know any of that. It's like, okay, that's why we're here. We're here to help you get to that place so you don't take a meeting with a publisher and say or do something or not be ready. And then that's their first and maybe sometimes only impression of you. And so that I think is something that I try and always tell people like, just slow down a little bit. Now, some people come and they're ready and it's like, okay, yes, we're here. But the slowing down, I think, also applies sometimes to the writing. People are so eager to bang out a song in a couple of hours and be like, okay, we're done. Great song. You hear a lot of people be like, oh, this is a rap, this is a rap, this is a rap. But you hear a lot of songwriters who are signed at publishing deals talk about, yes, those might be reps, but also if you just go back and edit it or you guys get together again, sometimes one line takes a good song to be a great song. And I talk to a lot of songwriters who are unsigned every day that'll play me a song and I'll call them out on something. I'll be like, did you just say that because it rhymed? And they're like, oh, and I'm like, no, see, that's the difference. You cannot rush it. It is you versus everybody else in Nashville. It's you versus yourself. It's you versus everyone else in Nashville because the level of writing in this town is so phenomenal. You have to strive to be that good. And just being like, yeah, I just did that because it rhymed, or, oh, yeah, I mean, I could maybe change that. That's not great. That's not what's going to make you a great writer. When you hear all of these incredible writers, whether they come speak at the office on Tuesday nights or at seminar, some educational program we're putting on, you hear the same things from people. Oh, yeah, we wrote this song in 35 minutes. We didn't think it would be anything. And then it was like one of their biggest number ones. Or you hear them talk about, we rewrote this song 9 times and it became what it was. I'm not saying you have to do that to every song, but I think if everyone just kind of took a breath for a minute, because we live in a society of instant gratification. And every song does not have to be instant gratification. If there is a song that you're like, this song is special, it deserves the time to go back to it and make it great. So it's like slowing down a little bit there, slowing down a little bit so that you're not getting yourself into situations with a publisher where it's like, that wasn't a great meeting. All of these things, I think if people just like take a step back, that will be beneficial for everybody. Because I do talk to a lot of people who are like, oh, I had a meeting with so and so. I'm like, why? And I was like, how'd it go? And they're like, I don't actually think it went that great. Those are the things that I love to be able to talk to people about. And I'm not saying I'm going to give you this earth-shattering advice that's going to make you get a pub deal or make your meeting go better, but I'm going to ask you questions that hopefully will make you think like, okay, am I really, really ready to go into this meeting? Because I want everybody to have a great meeting. I want everyone to have a great experience. And that's kind of what I love to do and talk to people about. I mean, obviously, I meet with people who are just writing their first song. I had a meeting a couple of days ago with a pro writer who is not re-signing his pub deal. He just wanted to come in and talk about what options he might have or what publishers I might know that he doesn't. He's just looking at all of his options. So it really spans across all kind of abilities of songwriting. But that would be one thing I would say is like just kind of slow down a little bit and dedicate the time to your craft that it deserves because you're here for a reason. You are taking a chance on yourself. So let's make it the best version of everything that you can make it.
So important. I can totally relate to what you were saying about one person. If you had just saw what I did a year ago, how much a difference makes. So it's like if you can have that much growth in a year and you give
Yeah.
yourself just a little bit more time, just like imagine where you're going to be next year. Imagine where you're going to be 6 months after that. You might then really be in a place that's cultivating the conversation instead of you having to go out and seek the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of times, as a writer or artist writer, you are the one pursuing. You're pursuing co writes that you really want. You're pursuing the publishers or labels or agents or managers, whatever. That's just inherently kind of what is going to happen because there are so many people in this town, and not everybody that is in the industry can go out every single night and see everything that's happening. But yes, if you can create your own buzz, if you can write with as many people, I have always tried to be a yes person. Can you do this? Yes. Can you learn this? Yes. Within reason now, I think probably put a little bit more guardrails on things just because I'm not 20 years old anymore and I can't go out every single night. But I always try and talk to people too about you have your tribe of people and that's wonderful, but write with as many people as you can, especially if you're not going the artist route and your focus is songwriting only. Get in as many camps as you can get in because the more camps you can get in, the more potential that you have of writing with artists that are having those conversations with industry professionals that then in turn will say like, oh yeah, I write with so and so and so and so and so and so and I love them. And these artists and other writers are having those conversations, the more groups and the more you network and the more you're in with people, the more your name starts to come up because as much as I'm like, oh, it's you versus everyone else, like that is a reality of this business. It's also Nashville is such a incredible, weird town of people rooting for everybody else too. That is special to this town. You don't get that in other music cities, and you don't get that in a lot of other cities in general. As much as it is, so many artists and so many writers and musicians, everyone does a really good job of wanting to support each other and cheer each other on and talk about the other writers and artists that they write with when they're taking their meetings. I've sat in on some publisher meetings with some of our members, and that's one of the first questions after tell me a little bit about yourself is who are you writing with? And so I've gotten to hear writers talk about like, well, I write with this person, this person. Oh, this person's such a great melody person. Or it's so wonderful to be able to sit in on those meetings and hear writers who are sitting in front of someone who may or may not sign them also be like, hey, all of my friends. It's just like, I love that about this profession and I love that about this city.
No, literally the amount of gems. I wish I had a notebook. The best thing is I get to go back and rewatch this and
Yeah.
get all these facts again. And I strongly recommend anyone listening to this episode, if you are finding sections of this conversation that are really impactful for where you are in your journey, go back, listen to those again because the amount of knowledge that you're sharing with us, Jill, is just truly
Oh, thank
phenomenal.
you.
I have like one or two selfish questions if you don't
Oh,
mind.
go hit me.
Okay, so the first question is I am a big believer of write in as many camps as you can get into, and I've tried to do that as much as I possibly can since I came to town. Sometimes you reach a point where either you didn't love the write or you just have other things on your schedule where it's hard to, or maybe there's just not a desire to want to circle back. How do people navigate that? Because I know how important relationships are. So it's like, how does someone walk that tightrope of, I want to be fair to myself and my calendar and my schedule and like where I feel like I can add value. And
Mhm.
I also don't want to go through a town burning bridges. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
I think that is in a profession where there are so many hard things that I think for me would be the hardest if I was in y'all's shoes because that is like such a personal thing or it can feel so personal. And when I say to like write in as many camps as you can, they also have to serve you. You don't want to spread yourself out and you're like, oh, I'm writing with like 30 different camps and I only really like writing with half of them. I think that's the hardest thing, but I think this is something where it is everyone in this business has these moments of growth and it is hard growth because it is the time where you're like, I started writing with these people when I first came to town. They took a chance on me. And I feel like I may have outgrown this group of people. Or maybe you get to the point where you're like, the songs, maybe they don't want to go back to them or they don't want to put the time into them. Whatever it is, whatever that instance is, a respectful conversation of, I have put myself in so many camps. I have to scale back because I'm not giving my best self to everybody, right? And you can't. You cannot. If you are spread out so thin, you cannot give your best self to so many people. So I think it's just the conversation of like, I have booked myself in so many rooms with so many different people. I need to scale back. And I need to really be mindful about whether it's the artists in the room or the groups or who is kind of on your level. And I just think I need to take a step back from like writing with you as regularly or hey, I know we write once a week, but I need to cut down to once a month for XYZ. No matter what you say, it's not going to be easy. And I think everyone understands this because they've either been in this situation before, or they're going to be in this situation. But you just have to know there is a time to be selfless and a time to be selfish. And these are the times where you kind of have to be a little bit selfish and know like this group might not be serving me as well right now as this group is. But if you still really enjoy writing with that group of people, maybe you just don't do it as frequently. Or maybe something has happened and you're just like, I just don't feel like I fit anymore. Then it's a conversation of like, I just don't feel like the songs are where I want them to be. And I just want to take a little bit of a break or however it is. It's so hard because it is like ending a dating, like that's the
Hmm.
part when they're like, this is like dating. It is sometimes, and you do have to do that. But I think as respectful as you can be and as just transparent as you can be, I think people respect that, even if it's not what they want to hear at the time. I do feel like that is the best way to do it. And this is the thing, everybody listening to this and you yourself might experience this. There is going to be someone that you stop writing with that is going to go blow up potentially. There is going to be someone that says to you, hey Paige, this isn't working out, and then you might go on and have a bunch of success without them. It's vice versa. I've had that in my career. I've not booked bands that I'm like, I don't know if this is going to work, that go on to do really great things. And you're like, oh, that's so on me. And it was never anything personal. It was just like, I'm not sure that they fit within the parameters that I have right now for this reason, It's the same for y'all. So There's no right or wrong way to do it. There's no formula of being like, so this ain't working no more. I think the kindest thing you can do is just be honest and transparent with people.
Yeah.
Does that help?
That does help. And I
Okay.
feel like I'm in a season of that where it's like, yeah, just trying to reevaluate what does as we're preparing for the end of the year. I feel like Nashville really shuts down around
Yep.
December. And when I'm looking to 2025 and, I big goals for next year, it's like, how do I make it as impactful as I can?
And at the same time, it's like this feels super daunting of like, ooh, this is not going to be great. I would also implore anybody going through this right now to also be like, this is actually a really good thing. If I'm outgrowing where I'm at, I'm growing. And that's what you want as a writer and as an artist writer. That's what you want. You want to be like, I'm going up to the next level. I'm trying to write up. I'm writing up. I'm writing. That is the goal for everybody. And as hard as it is, at the same time, I want you to take a moment to be like, this is actually a really wonderful thing because this is why you came here, or this is why you do what you do wherever you live.
Yeah. And when you told the story at the beginning of our talk about, I didn't move here to work in the gift shop or I didn't move here to wear this uniform. It's like, yeah, that's such a great reminder. We all moved here with goals for ourselves, and
Mhm.
it's important to honor those as much as we can.
Yeah. I mean, and they might change while you're here. I kept thinking, like, oh, I think I want to get into artist management. I think I want to do that. And my best friend's an artist manager. I'm like, I don't want to do that for other reasons. But I think it's one of those things, is like the more people that you meet and the more experiences you have, whether it's in Nashville or whatever city you're in, the people that you meet sometimes help shape the direction that you go in. They kind of redirect you. That is an important thing for you to understand. It's like sometimes you don't understand why you're kind of getting that redirection, or why you meet someone that says something that makes you go, ooh, do I want to do that? I mean, I was on a path for an entirely different career and was sitting in a class, and I asked the instructor, why do you not do this job anymore? And he told me a story, and I was like, I am out of here. I withdrew from all. It's just those things, no matter like what you believe in, universe or spiritual or whatever, those things happen for a reason and kind of get you to where you are. And so you just keep growing, keep being open to other opportunities, or whether it's rights or what have you. Like, as long as I think you stay open and continue to create opportunities for yourself, no matter where you live, you're going to be fine.
I so appreciate the advice. And like, I have one other selfish question about
Yeah.
myself. And if you
Yeah.
don't want to answer this or you feel uncomfortable, we can cut it. It's no big deal.
Okay.
But like, okay, I think I've moved beyond the novice beginner stage. I've been
Okay.
writing a
Yep.
lot. I've been in town. I'm getting close to 2.5 years, getting close to that mile marker. So I'm like, okay, I'm like putting a little bit of time in. I've been writing some good songs. I've gotten my first couple cuts this year,
Yep.
independent artist, which is really exciting.
Yep.
Of course, I'm not signed. I'm not talking to publishers. Like, I'm not at that stage yet. So I'm in this like in between.
Mhm.
How do I continue to move forward? I know it's being patient. I know it's writing songs. I know it's getting into camps, but it's like, what can I be doing? Because you know me, we've had conversations. I guess I'm just like, oh, Jill, what should I be doing right now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would ask you, it kind of goes back to last question. Are you in rooms with people that are challenging you? Because
No.
how do you become a better writer? You write and you write and you write and you write. You just keep writing. That's one part of it. I really believe I've seen people, you one of them, that have moved here, or I talk to people from all over the world that have never co-written, and they write and write, 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 write by themselves. And then they start co-writing, and their whole style of writing changes. It improves. They think of things, and it's because someone's in the room challenging them. Well, I wouldn't say that, or I think we can beat that line. If I was in your shoes, what I would want to be doing is writing with people that challenge me. Is this the best line that we could have done? Should we push? Oh, this idea has been done before. Well, then how are we saying it differently? And if we're going to say it differently, is it equal to how it has been said before, or is it a little bit notch up? I would want those people in the room with me to be like, nah, Jill, that is not it. Or not even, it's not always a negative thing, right? I think a lot of times people think about feedback or a critique is like, oh, I'm just not good enough. Because I think as creative people, it is in us of like, oh, they didn't like that. They hated it. No, it's just to make you think a different way. When someone gives you feedback or a critique about a song, one, they might not be right. But if you're in the room with people that you trust every day writing and they're not pushing back on you, I would say to them, like, hey, guys, do you think that we are writing the best song that we could write today? We need to push each other. Because I think the one thing about once you get kind of camped up, everyone gets real comfortable with each other. And you write, like, oh, great, great, great. And nobody stops to check each other. And I think those are the things that you hear pro writers say, oh, that wasn't it. And we went back, or the artist was like, no, this isn't it. Everybody at all levels of writing has someone, whether it's their publisher or the artist or another writer in the room saying, hey, I think we need to change this. I think we need to give it another look. That's what I would say. At your level, when you're writing and you're getting cuts with independent artists, which is such a huge thing, you should be so very proud of yourself. And any writer that's getting cuts with independent artists, y'all should be so proud. And I hear sometimes people say, well, I have some cuts, but it's only with the independent artist. No, take that only out. We are removing, I'm only a songwriter. No, you're not. We're removing, it's only an independent artist. Cut it out. We're not only anything. Those cuts with independent artists say a lot to publishers too, because in the world of independent being like so many people are independent, what that says to people, it's like, okay, Paige is writing with people that are willing to spend their own money that they don't have. No one's funding them to go and record this song and then putting their own money into promoting it on socials that no one is helping to fund. That says a lot to people of like, look at all of these independent artists. And what that says to anyone else in the industry is like, okay, Paige or whatever your name is when you're listening to this is writing songs at a level that the artists are happy with and want to cut. That says a lot about where you're at as a writer. Keep focusing on that. Like, that's such a good thing to keep focusing on. You've gotten yourself into rooms in such a short amount of time that people that have been here longer have not gotten themselves into. And that's a testament to you as a writer. It's a testament to who you are as a person, that people want to be in the room with you. They want to write with you and they recommend. Like, you've had people say, oh, do you know Paige? You need to write with Paige. That is the biggest compliment you can get, I feel like, as a songwriter who's independent and unsigned, is another writer recommending you to an artist to write with. That's just such a huge thing. So I would say if I was in your shoes, I would make sure that I'm in these rooms, that I'm pushing other people and they're pushing me, because it's only going to help you get better. And then keep getting yourself in those rooms with these independent artists and write the songs and take the time to make these artists feel good and want to cut your songs. I talk to a lot of artists that this conversation has come up a lot with me recently of a lot of writers are like, oh, I write with all these artists and nothing ever happens with the songs that we write. And of course, like, as an independent artist, you can't put out 300 songs a year. Like, that's just not a feasible thing, right? A lot of people are putting out 5 songs at a time, 1 song at a time, a whole album, 10 or whatever it is at a time. And that might be all they do all year long. But then I talk to other writers and they're like, well, I just follow up. Like, after I write a song with an artist, I'll follow up and say, hey, is there anything that we should change? They don't let that be the last conversation about that song of like, hey, is there anything that you want to change? It seemed like you really liked it, but like, do you want to go back and change anything? And this writer was saying, like, a lot of times artists will be like, oh, actually, yes. And that has resulted in that writer getting more cuts with artists just by going back to them and saying, how do you really feel about that song? Is there anything I can help you do? If that writer also does tracks, that writer was like, do you want me to do a demo on this? I think sometimes just a call back of, do you want to revisit this song? It helps an artist, I think, sometimes feel a little bit more like, oh, okay, the writers really believe in this song too. It wasn't me just feeling like this was good. They're really excited about it too. And I think when a writer can show an artist that truly, not just like, oh, every song is great, let me just be excited, but like when you are really onto something with an artist and the artist really seems to be invested in that song, support that artist. A songwriter that knows what an artist has to go through to from start to finish of a song, and then know about, oh, they have to put on social media, they're putting money into recording this, and they're going to promote it, and they're going to do all this, and they're going to play it out. Support those artists. If I was a songwriter right now, I would be following up, I would be going to the rounds that they play, I would be doing all of those things, because as a songwriter, when you're in Nashville, it can sometimes feel like I'm doing this all by myself. An artist is also doing it all by themselves. Plus, they're their own manager, they're their own booking agent, they're their own content creator, they're all of these things. And I think when you hear about all the camps kind of coming up together, I think if you look at those camps, you see a group of people that are really supporting one another. It's not just about writing, it's like, how can we all support each other? And it goes like, there is a writer, and they just announced it, so I can say, but I was talking to Ben Wagner, who
Love
just
Ben.
signed
He's
at 12.
awesome.
That's what everybody says. When I say Ben Wagner, I was like, oh, I love Ben Wagner, because he is the epitome of everything that we have talked about today. But I was talking to Ben, and we were just talking about different things. And he's like, yeah, almost everyone in my camp has gotten signed, like people that he's been coming up with and that he started writing with. He said a lot of them are signed. But he said, except for these people. And he said, can you help them? Can you talk to them? And that, I think, says so much about the group that they have developed over the last 4 or 5 years. Of now, Ben's like, okay, I'm signed, but can someone help me take care of the rest of my people so they can come up together? That says a lot about just Ben as a human being and his character and who he is, but it says a lot about that group of folks and how tight they are and how supportive they are of each other. And I think if you can find that within all of these tribes that you're in, I think that is like the best thing in the world, to be able to find a group of people and y'all support each other.
That's incredible. And yeah, for everyone going out, meeting people at round, you can meet those people every day, whether it's at a round or at an NSAI event or at another music event around town. You just have such an opportunity to meet those
Yeah.
camps and grow together.
And if you're not in Nashville, there are people. I grew up in a very non-musical town. There were very few people that played outside of like I was in band, but that had bands, that were not part of a school program. Very few people. But somehow they found each other. So if you are listening to this and you are in Albuquerque, New Mexico, there are people in your town. Go to the shows, go to the coffee shops, create your own writers round, create your own space to play. You will naturally find other people in your community and build your community there. Not everyone's goal is to move to Nashville. I think that's the most wonderful thing about the internet, is you can put your music out into the world and not be in a music's town. You can find other people and have your version of whatever you want to accomplish in your town. So, that's just for people that can't move to Nashville or don't want to. There are still things that you can accomplish as a songwriter and as an artist in your community or regionally. Find your people. They're out there. No matter where you are, you will find your people.
Oh my God, Jill, I can literally sit and talk to you all day, every day. I always leave so inspired.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
but I want to be respectful of your time. So I have
Yeah,
one
go
fun
ahead.
question, which is you have had some amazing career milestones. You're a yes person. You said it yourself. So, like, I imagine you have dreams and goals. Is there anything on your bucket list, any particular part of the industry that you've yet to really dig into? Or is there anything that you're really excited about accomplishing in the future in your next steps?
Yes, I said this. I kind of almost like don't want to say, but I'm gonna say it because I'm like, I'm gonna speak it into existence. I would say one of the goals I have here, I mean, obviously to get as many people where they need to go, no matter what that is. No one's goals are the same. But I do have this thing that I would love to do, which is, and this, they might hear it and be like, you're insane. It's never going to happen. But I would love to have a songwriter round on the Grand Ole Opry.
That
I
is
think it would be the coolest thing in
genius.
the world. And it kind of happened a little bit with like a Belmont alumni thing. So I'm like, it counts, but it doesn't count. I want it to be like a public show where NSAI, and it doesn't have to be the whole night, but like take out a couple performances and it becomes a pure songwriter show. Because I think, like me, I grew up in a small town and was always obsessed with music, everything about it. And I would always read about the music, but I still didn't grasp the songwriter thing. I would love to continue educating the world about the fact that songwriting is a profession and there are people that put so much of themselves in these songs that you hear every day. I just want more people to know about that. When you think about the Grand Ole Opry is kind of like the pinnacle for a country artist to play, no matter where they play in the world, it's the Grand Ole Opry and it's so sacred to them. So it might even be blasphemous that I'm suggesting this, but I would just love to do like an NSAI presents these songwriters at the Grand Ole Opry. I just think it would be a really cool thing. I will, if I can tell you, one of the things that made me think about it is my first Nashville Songwriter Awards at the Ryman that I was working. Kat Higgins was, she was a writer on a song that was one of our 10 songs I wish I'd written. And we were standing backstage and she looked at me and she just said, "Thank you so much." And I was like, "You're welcome. For what?" And she was like, "I would never be able to play the Ryman if it wasn't for the show." She's a songwriter. She's not trying to do the artist thing, or if she is, she wasn't currently at that time. And I was just like, oh, that is such an incredible way to look at it. A lot of these folks that songwriting is what they want to do and they don't have an interest in being a artist. That show gives songwriters an opportunity to play the Ryman Auditorium, which is one of the best venues in the world. And that stuck with me. And it was so crazy because, in such a good way, this year, Kat was one of the writers on The Painter, which was Song of the Year. And so we were taking pictures and everything. I said, "Kat, you probably don't remember this, but I just want to tell you this is what you said." And that is stuck with me about how important that was to you to be able to play the Ryman as a songwriter. And she was like, "Oh my gosh." And like, that's kind of where this started to come for me, is just like, I know that not everyone has aspirations to be an artist. So I want to have a place for them to be able to play one of the other coolest stages in the world, which is the Grand Ole Opry. So that would be like super goal of just something that I think is really cool. It would be cool for NSAI and it would be really amazing for songwriters. So that's just one of them. I've got a lot of things that I'd love to do, but that's just kind of one of those like, boop, I'm just putting it out there. And if at some point we do it, great. If not, that's also okay too.
Hell yeah. What a great, another testament to how important songwriting is to you and how much you like think about the creatives in this town. But I am all about manifesting. And my dream is that we captured it here on the So Rude podcast. So when this happens, I'm going to take this clip and I'm going to put it online. I'll be like, Jill Moody said this. She manifested this happening. And look at it now.
I
That'll be
hope
so
so.
cool.
I hope so. And you know, this is the thing, like there are so many things that I hope for all of you. It's such a cool time and place in my life because so many things over the years I've gotten to just witness. I've gotten to sit side stage and watch these things, or I've gotten to be able to take my parents to XYZ thing that they would have never been able to do, or I've gotten to have so many incredible experiences in my time in Nashville. I want to help be a place that helps provide those kind of experiences for other people. Right now, we have an ask out to someone that I would flip my bleep if he says yes to seminar. I will be so, so excited. Those for me are like, you have all these goals throughout the year. What new things can we create to be just as cool as last year? And this is a goal person that I think people would just be like, okay, this is ridiculously awesome. There's always little things like that that I can't share with people, but I honestly say, like, my goal, I think, for next year, outside of like the obvious things, would just be keeping our foot on the gas with y'all, keep supporting you all and songwriters, and helping y'all accomplish as many of your all's goals as you can.
I love that. Jill, thank you so much for coming on the
Thank
podcast.
you. Thank you for asking me. I feel so selfish because, like, have I even asked Paige a question today?
That is so not the point. No, no, no. I
But
wanted to.
I feel like in our meetings, I feel like I get to just like listen and enjoy y'all talk. And I was like, gosh, I have not shut up this whole time.
And I
So
am so happy about that because truly, I am so grateful for you taking the time. I know I'm so thankful that you chose to come on the show, but I truly believe everyone listening, whether they're an artist or a writer that's just starting out, or there's someone further along their career, whether it's booking or co writing or pushing themselves to question lines in the room, like there was just truly so many gems. And I think every single person will take something away from this episode.
oh, well, thank you. And thank you for asking me. I adore you as a human being and as a songwriter. When you asked, I was like, yes, of course, I would love to do this just because it's you. But also, thank you for asking people to come on a podcast and talk about songwriting, and just someone talking about what they've done and what they've accomplished and how they've done it and what they've learned along the way is such a lesson for other people. And that is like such an unselfish thing for you to do, to be so giving of your time so other people can learn things, is like an incredible thing. So thank you so much for being the amazing human being that you are, and keep doing what you're doing. I cannot wait to see all of the other guests that you have on this podcast and watch it grow, and just kind of get to know that I got to share some time with you and do this. So thank you for having me.
Oh my God, such a pleasure. Every time I bring someone on the show, I always close with the same final question,
Okay.
which is, what is one thing you would tell your younger self?
Oh, this is so easy for me.
Hit me.
I've said this before because someone asked me this when I got the Women in Music City. Never allow the size of the town you grow up in to dictate the size of your dreams. Period. As the kids say.
Mic drop.
If you are in the middle of nowhere right now and you think, I could never do this, doesn't even matter if it's in the music business. Like, you can. You just have to be a bull-headed, take no shit from people. No, I'm going to do this. And I had no backup plan when I came here. I don't know what I would have done had I not got that job at the Wild Horse. I have no idea where I would be, but you just have to believe in yourself, because nobody else is going to believe in you. I mean, your family and stuff, of course, but like, your family is not going to push you as hard as you need to push yourself to reach what your dream is, no matter what that dream is. So that would be my thing.
Jill Moody, we are also thankful for you in Nashville, truly.
Thank you. I'm thankful for y'all. Thank you for allowing me to have a place to work.
For as long as you would like, you will have a place here. So
Thank
if
you.
people are interested in getting in contact with you, how can they find you?
Yeah, NashvilleSongwriters.com is our website. So if you're interested in songwriting, or you don't live in Nashville, we have 100 chapters worldwide. So I'm sure that there is a chapter near you where you can get connected. But I am here 5 days a week. You can call, you can email me, set up an appointment. That's where I'm at. It's just Jill at NashvilleSongwriters.com. But all of my wonderful staff also takes meetings. So check out the website and what we do for the songwriters. And I'm not just saying that because I work here. I've said it before I worked here. There's not another organization with as much integrity as NSAI that really believes in doing whatever we can to help songwriters, whether it's get better with this craft or connect with people that you want to connect with. that is what we do. So Google us.
Love it. I will have all of those links down below in the episode description. So that way, if you're interested in checking out NSAI and all the incredible work that they do for songwriters, both in Nashville and internationally, or getting in contact with Jill or any of the lovely staff, I love all of the people that work there. It's always a pleasure walking in the door and getting greeted by such friendly faces. I will have all of that information below. Also, if you're not already following us on Instagram or TikTok, you can find us at sorude.podcast. The website is www.sorudemedia.com. So make sure to check out all of our lovely podcast information there. And as always, have a fantastic day. I hope you really enjoyed this episode with Jill, and I can't wait to chat with you next time. Bye.
Bye.